All right. Why don't we get going here? First of all, welcome everybody. And if you're here in the New York area, as many of us are, it's a proper winter. And if you're in New Orleans, it's also a proper winter. Um, but you've probably seen images of winter sports being played in the French Quarter of New Orleans. And that's a segue to our speaker today, Denny Breitenfeld, who is no stranger to the New York XR scene. Many know him from his work in Glass Thumb. I first became acquainted with Denny when he was at Verizon. He was head of volumetric technology. But he founded a company a couple of years ago called Skyrim.ai, and again, we're seeing more and more interesting use cases for immersive technology in storytelling in sports, which of course is grown in leaps and bounds in all sorts of sports in terms of consumption, but also production. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. I should also mention that Denny is president of the Volumetric Format Association, and we can talk about that a little bit. But without further ado, I will turn it over to the founder and CEO of Skyrim AI, Denny Breitenfeld. Denny, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Chris. Um, yeah, so I think most of what I'm going to talk about, it's probably preaching to the choir. Like you guys are well versed in this space. So I thought maybe what I do is just make sure we're all on the same page. I'll probably whiz through the sort of overview of what spatial media is and how we define it. And maybe we can get into sort of that conversation about what Chris was saying about sports and production and have more of a conversation, less of a presentation, if that's good with everybody. Jump in at any time as well. So, just a little bit about myself. I got started in production a very long time ago. I started my first production company in 1993, but for the last 20 years, really been focusing on new media. And I guess that starts out with interactive DVDs or web DVDs to then HDVD and format war with Blu-ray and what kind of interactivity could you do for whether it's a coloring book for Disney or a whole sort of follow the white rabbit with Blu-ray and this whole sort of Java on the disk type capability. Did that for a long time. Sold the company to Sony. And then what's the next thing? Streaming. And then what's after that? Well, 360 video with VR. And then finally, it's like, wait a second, I'd like to go over there and see what those dolphins are doing, or I'd like to go over here. And with 360 video and VR, you're sort of stuck. I think everybody knows that. And that led to volumetric video. And so for the last 9 years, I've been focusing on that. Started consulting at Verizon in that space, as Chris said, led a team of about 20 to do applied R&D and where the use cases could be that landed on sports. We set up a large volumetric studio here in New Jersey and focused on things like how do we make it practical, how do we not use infrared, but also really realized that no one company could do this on their own. And I still believe that today. And that's why we launched the Volumetric Format Association. Other Verizon members were part of the VR Association. So this was more of a standards body, and we invited as many folks in as possible. And still to this day, any way that I can help contribute to the sort of ecosystem of volumetric video, whether it's definitions, best practices, or even IP, and work with anybody in this space. It's part of our mission. As I said, no one company can do this alone. And as Chris said, we've been focusing on spatial sports media. We have a little teaser. It's on our website. You can sort of see what some of our work has been. That's a little about me and sort of the company. I'm going to go a little bit more into spatial sports, and that's really what we're doing. But that's the backstory there. Like I said, let's just make sure we're sort of all on the same page. Um, what is spatial media? I know it's called volumetric video. My title at Verizon was director of volumetric video. I still believe that, but I think we've sort of call it spatial media because having a video background and production background, sometimes audio is second in sort of everybody's mind, and we want to make sure it's first. And then also coming from the interactive layer or industry for media, when you just add the word video, sometimes people, one, they don't do audio, and then they don't realize that's a medium. And so that's why we call it spatial media, where there's a full interactive layer, there's metadata. So whether it's, stats about a game, or maybe there's a game mechanic built into the metadata that's part of the media. So that's why we call it spatial media. The other thing we want to really differentiate, and I think everybody does, is we move into a world where we're literally just capturing the world as is. Yes, you can still go into a studio just like you do if you shoot a movie or you shoot a sitcom, you still use studios, but you really can capture anything that's happening in the real world, even without a studio. Therefore, you use traditional cameras. I mentioned the idea of capturing audio, and then the fact that we hope with the ecosystem and the excitement the industry has gotten in the last 2 years and prior to that, that it is not a codec. It comprises of a lot of codecs. Sort of, as I said, my background is in the optical disc space. On a Blu-ray disc, there's VC1, there's MPEG-2, and there's H.264, and now H.265. You can use any of those. It's your choice. It's part of the format. And those are the codecs. And we hope that spatial media, with all the interest we're getting in Gaussian splats and NERFs and the next generation and previous stuff, it continues to be a media and grows into more of a media than just a codec. So that's how we see it. That's how we sort of differentiate or try to position it, I should say, versus just traditional, say, volumetric video. Um, and what we like about it, and one thing if I've ever had a conversation with you or have talked about this before, is content is king. It always has been king. It will continue to be king. And so we see that spatial media is, like I think most of us, is just a vehicle to tell great stories. There's lots of different ways people have sort of looked at this. So I thought I would share sort of how we look at storytelling with spatial media. And we always come from it from the perspective of backwards compatibility. Again, optical discs, it sort of has to be backwards compatibility for adoption. And so we just start with level one. Let's make production easier. So you're capturing something in the real world. So you have your script. Let's say it's it's a drama. You quickly can set up your sort of production environment. So you set up the cameras. You don't have to worry about trusses or anything. You can just put them on sticks or anything that would keep them level, or not even level, just sort of in place. And you surround your scene, and then you shoot it. And instead of worrying about, say, hey, I'm going to have a scene and I need to get these 6 shots in a day or 4 shots in a day, close up, reaction shot, another close up, and then a wide, you just have the actors shoot what they act the way they are, you shoot it as is, and then you go get those shots either after, maybe you do it real time, but the format itself allows for either of those depending on the style of the directing, depending on how the style of the editing. And then if you needed lighting, all that could change. So just even, I know we're talking about AR VR today, but just at the basic level, it makes production a lot easier and allows sort of the acting to be focused on the acting. They don't have to worry about blocking against the camera for the camera. They can block against the other actor and however the script may be. Then you get into like level two. And again, this is probably preaching to the choir, but let's say it's a romantic comedy and you have your one relationship side is all upset and the other one is all upset, they leave, and maybe you go follow the male character and what he's going to do that night, and the female character is going to do that. And you can basically take one story and sort of split it into almost two, maybe one and a half, especially if production's easier. That's one kit idea of probably 1,000 different ways to have multiple perspectives, but that's sort of what we think about level two, and that easily gets translated into more of the AR VR. You can be in that moment when the argument's happening and then decide you're going to take this person's side or that person's side. And then finally, you get into level three, which is the fully interactive. The way we see it is interactive every way you can imagine. So fully engaged pop-ups, the whole 9 yards, it's stats on the screen to, take the unfortunate events that happen in California. Let's say we have the drones there and they're capturing what the devastation has had. And then you, as a viewer here in New Jersey, I'm not there. I can put on my headset and I am now in control of the story. I can go at the pace I want. I can see the stats if I need to. I have that interactivity. So that's sort of what we mean. It's a big scale, but how do you go from sort of today to there? That's what we mean about the medium is just one piece. The story is obviously the most important. And there may be level 4 and 5, but these are just sort of how we framed it as we build out our spatial media platform. Are there questions on that? Before I go on, wasn't sure if the dinging was questions, but no, it's just most of the fun. Okay. So why do we like sports? Um, Sports is one of those forms of content that's it's not scripted, but also there are lots of reasons people watch sports, whether you're an avid fan and you want to see all the stats, you're in fantasy, you do sports betting, or it's a family night out. So you're taking the family to an NWSL game, or you're going to see a baseball game on a Saturday night in the summer. Your reason to go in and enjoy sports is different than the person sitting next to you at the venue or even at the bar. And yet the story is still the story. The content, I'm sorry, the content is still the content, but the story can be personalized. A great example is, the alternate cast that's happening with SpongeBob and Manny cast, and then the Australian Open just did a Wii cast. I'm not sure what they're called, what people have nicknamed it, but it looks like Nintendo Wii playing tennis. And it connects us. And what we thought is, okay, we take those levels that we just described, and we can literally apply each of those levels to sports. So the just capturing a game for, say, La Liga, which is the Spanish league, when they do a tournament 2 times a year. It's called El Clasico. The last one was in October. When you watch El Clasico on ESPN Plus, you get to have, this year it was 6 different channels or streams. I can watch an English cast, like the Manning cast, but with English announcers, similar with Spanish announcers. So I see announcers, I see the game. I can watch the Skycam version. I can watch just the regular Spanish broadcast version, and then I can watch the English broadcast version. So I got all those choices. And they're all different sort of productions, literally, physically different productions with spatial sports media. You're capturing it, and then all those productions become software-based productions to the point where even the Skycam channel could be AI based or algorithmic based. And I can have a Skycam version that's going to follow. I'm a Detroit Lions fan. I can see it from the Detroit Lions perspective, sort of hovering over that perspective of the field. And maybe if you're New York Giants, you'd have the opposite. And I would be getting that perspective. So that's like level 1, changing production using spatial media. Level 2 is, okay, you know what? I'm a Taylor Swift fan. I'm at the Chiefs game. And I would rather see how Taylor is reacting to what's happening with her boyfriend on the field, or I'm a diehard. And now I am now following the game, and the story is changing a little differently while the game's going on. And then obviously level 3 is, hey, I want all the fans to be Chiefs outfits, even though we're at the Jets. I want the field to be, really decked out like it's, at the Chiefs venue instead of the MetLife, and you're completely changing. You're interacting with the game. So this is what we mean how sports is perfect for it, because the game's going to happen, but why we're there is different. What we want to get out of it is different, and we can actually start to tailor it without getting in the way of acting and scripting and all that. It's just sort of happening around us. So that's what we really like about spatial sports media. Was there a question? Yeah,
Uh, if you're actually talking about from just a fan point of view,
yeah,
changing who's playing. I mean, you're watching, let's say, the Buffalo Bills and whoever,
yeah,
and but I'm not a Buffalo Bills fan, you know. I want to put them in, I don't know why, in Jets uniforms
yeah.
and make it as if there was a Jets versus the other team going on. Um, isn't there, like, people who invested millions of dollars in building up the Buffalo Bills brand? I mean, that's the whole point of these games. I mean,
Yeah.
that even though that's, I can see, technically doable with AI now and everything, I can't imagine that if people will take that lying down.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll go that far, and I don't think we want to be. I think the way we see it, and not that thing, the way we see it is let's hand some of these controls over to the existing industry. And this goes back to how we see that the ecosystem is very important. Giving the controls over to, say, a broadcaster, let's use, I'll go back to the Detroit Lions. They lost, unfortunately, but when they were losing, during the game they were losing, um, uh, against the Washington team. There's a situation where one of the announcers, Tom, was he was announcing what's going on, and all of a sudden he's saying, call timeout, call timeout, call timeout. And none of the other announcers were sort of catching on what he was saying, because the countdown's happening, and I wouldn't say he's freaking out, but he's elevated, he's excited. And imagine if he had a way, a sort of a spatial media telestrator, so he could quickly go boom, 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 and he can sort of be will, let's say he's in a VR headset, he can go touch on the players and go 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's too many men on the field. And so that's what I think is more valuable than, yes, we can put them all in a different outfit, but it's more of pointing out what's going on and using the medium to be able to do that, because nobody saw it. And well, obviously the ref saw it, but nobody else was really paying to it besides Tom. And he was just using what he knew how to do, and that's his voice, but it wasn't conveyed on screen. So I think those kind of tools. And another example is, hey, I like the way this sort of play happened on the field, and I just want to highlight the players that made it happen. Either the athletes that were there on the field that weren't part of it, you can make them disappear so they're not there, and you're just showing the path the ball took, or you can make them black and white and then have the ones that were instrumental in color. So I think it goes back to the story, why it helps the story, why it also helps the brands, but the medium allows for that in ways that make sense more than anything else. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that use case I completely understand and get behind.
Um, so I get we can talk a little bit about the agents before I go on to the next slide. The way we see some of this is, if I can sort of do, as a fan, if I can be able to say, you know what, I would really like to see how I have a wide receiver on, say, the Jets, on my fantasy team, and I need to see the highlights and how this wide receiver gave me X amount of points, and what the total yards was. Being able to tell the app, whether it's ESPN Plus, or maybe I'm at Yahoo Fantasy, being able to sort of describe how I'd like to see this content and how it relates to what I'm doing. That's where we see the spatial sports agents sort of come into play, where those kind of capabilities that we just went with, Tom, and the announcing and everything else, now you start to add context. Instead of having a manual step in place, it could be driven more of by an AI agent. And it could be something where as I move from sort of device to device, the agent can sort of tailor the content. So a real example is, let's say I'm watching the game at home on the big screen. There's a play that happens, and it's controversial. The AI would know that I'm rooting for this team. I don't believe that this play should have been, a foul or, a flag. And I pick up my phone. The game is transferred to my phone, and now I can see it in AR. If I have a headset on, maybe I can actually put the headset on and I can see where the foul was, and he was not out, he was in, he's pushed, whatever it may be. And the agent itself will sort of switch the perspective and take control to show me how I would like to see that controversial call, whether I'm for or against it. So that's one really rudimentary example of how we're sort of starting to build out our AI agent foundation to be able to provide for those capabilities. Was a question on that? And the reason we can do it is because we're able to understand what is going on in the scene. It's 3D data. If we move a hand from this part of the environment to that, we have to move it in 3D space. So we know the speed, we know its performance. We are doing computer vision on the capture side. We're doing identification. So back to it as a medium or a format, all that data can be in there. That gets passed to the agent as input in by frames, and then it has sort of a knowledge about me, and it can talk to our spatial media player and drive what changes on the screen or interactively. So that's how we're sort of building it out. And the more collaboration, the more data, the better. Better for the fan, the better for the broadcaster, better for even integrating with sports betting or fantasy football or whatever the fantasy sports is or anything like that.
Denny, this is amazing, and I think one of the really interesting things is getting this across all platforms too.
Yeah.
And again, you're almost building a sort of a next generation broadcast workflow, but it's gamifying it. I mean, I think from the XR standpoint, this is really huge, and this is really, I mean, as you said, the more data, the better. You can think of how alternate versions of, I mean, sorry for your Lions, but maybe you could have created an alternate fourth quarter that would be more appealing to you to play with. But that is, that's that we have these capabilities now, and
Yeah, let's keep it.
it's super cool. I'm a Giants fan, so you know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the playoffs are anymore. So I have maybe three highlights from this season, and you know what? That's better than two. So so there you have it. But yeah, I find it interesting that when you look at what you can do to sort of pull in all these different threads of the sports world, from fantasy to sort of esports to, because I think of sort of the Twitch verse and esports and all these different things. But this is really a much more personalized way to take what we already have. One of the questions, the obvious questions I have is how do you work, if at all, with the licensors on this?
Yeah, the way we tackle it is the media rights folks still are the media rights folks, and maybe they'll change. Obviously, you look at Netflix, and they did their first NFL games, huge success, $150 million spend. They use CBS Sports as the production, so the media rights folks will change. The tools that those folks get to use will change too, and we want to help. We want to help usher in those tools, right? I'm a firm believer that content's king, but you create content as a destination. If you try to get people to go in too many destinations, you then devalue or dilute where they can go, and they just won't go to. maybe I'll give a better example. If you're going to create 360 video for sports, it's probably best if it lives where sports are and not its own thing where there's cats and this and that. So we want to make sure that spatial media is with existing 2D media is what I'm trying to say. So working with the broadcasters, working with the media rights holders, and those media rights holders may own all cast rights, they may own highlights, and that fits into. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because we did a lot of work with MediaKind a couple of years ago when they were doing things with tiled media
Yeah.
to do that kind of 360 for various sports, soccer, football, a little bit of FIBA basketball. But I think that from a storytelling aspect, this is really interesting in terms of where this goes to gamify. Your comment about the Netflix NFL games, I thought was interesting because I had some colleagues who were, how do I say this? They were a little disappointed that there wasn't more of what you're talking about.
Mm.
And I thought, well, let's take some baby steps here. But it's not just us who are in the industry. I think that there would be far more people who would see that as an opportunity without devaluing the Netflix brand. I mean, TNT has been doing their overtime, multicam view for years with just the
Yeah.
the natural court audio, which I truly love. I think that's a great thing. But I think the more we get some level of interactivity in this, and I think that that's where I see you going with this in some rather extraordinary ways. Rodrigo Paiva, another possible application could be for training athletes. Yes, where the coach can put a headset on and explore movement from different angles, asking the athlete to repeat the movement while comparing previous performance on the fly, helping visualize the change. Um, is that an area that you're looking at, sports training, or you're mostly working on the sort of the sports storytelling?
Yeah, it's definitely area to, we even featured on our website. What we're trying to do is make sure that what if we have this big melting pot of data, let's see if we can all sort of come together on what let's use sports athletes training and what does that data look like and how can it be sort of standardized, right? So if our system captures it, great. If another system captures it, great. But the trainer or the physical therapist or whoever's going to receive this and they're going to play it on a device, a tablet, or look at it over and over on a big screen, or however they're going to consume it.
United States Senate created a special committee to look into the activities of U.
Thank you, Blair. There you go.
It's in a format that's sort of as universal as possible. And I think what that allows for is that, okay, let's focus on the experience. Let's focus on getting that data in the hands of a subject matter expert. I'm not an I wish I was a better athlete, but it's not our wheelhouse to understand
Right.
exactly how to parse it out and send. So we'll do some capturing of it. We'll work with others. But we like the idea that no matter what the system is, it's still one system. You don't need a capture system for broadcast, alt cast, spatial media cast,
That
and then
that's
health and
that's a
safety.
huge that's I think that this may be that sort of that tipping point that we've reached. And I thought it was interesting that you mentioned again the Christmas Day Netflix the NFL games, because I think that is has raised that conversation. Of course, Amazon, Prime has been carrying the Thursday night NFL games now for several seasons. And one could very well say, well, Amazon also owns Twitch, and Whole Foods too, but just
Exactly.
kidding. Anyway, I think that this sort of raises the bar in terms of where that level of production, from a storytelling aspect, can go, because there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of money in sports, and we're not just talking NFL football. Obviously, we're talking all sports. Um, any other questions here for Denny? And by the way, Denny, thank you for this. I really think that, among other things, this has opened up some new ideas and some new doors for many of the people who have attended. But
Mm.
kudos to you, and your
Thank
team
you.
at Skyrim. Yeah.
Thank you. And we go into a lot of details. There's a free report on our website. Just go to Skyrim.ai/CES 2025. And hopefully it sparks a conversation. That's why we did the report. Loved it feedback. It's actually on page 2. We want your feedback. We want your criticisms. We want your ideas. Real quick, I know we're almost out of time, but coming from the Blu-ray disc, there were a lot of things that were really neat. Ideas on paper. Picture in picture was one of them. It failed, right? So what we want to do is there's lots of creative ideas. Michael, you mentioned one. Maybe it's the right idea, maybe it's not, but hopefully we can build out a rapid, let's learn what works. Let's learn what the audience wants now. I'm older, maybe the younger TikTok generation wants to see some kind of interactivity. The medium should allow for it, but for it to be successful, we need to sort of fail fast. And the more ideas and the more feedback, the better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and look forward to reading through this more. And please do go to Skyrim.ai for the State of Spatial Media 2024. So spatial creation. You can add that to your new buzzwords. If you're playing buzzword bingo today, we didn't have that many, so I don't think anyone would have won. But spatial creation for sure. Denny Breitenfeld, really thank you again, Denny, for being here. And before we go, Michael, who do we have upcoming?
We don't have anyone confirmed yet, but I hope to have someone by the beginning of next week who will be talking about VR and AI and historical sites in Great Britain. So there's always something coming.
Awesome, excellent.
Yeah.
Well, in any case, thank you again, Denny. As always, as we've been recording these sessions now for the last couple of months, you will find this very soon. Again, great visual there. Thank you. That's a great one to end on. So yeah, so thank you again, Denny Breitenfeld, Skyrim.ai. Stay tuned as we come to you again on the. Let's see if I can do my math here. The 6th of February. Michael will probably be hosting that one, but. In any case, everyone be well, be safe, and always be virtual. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers. Thank you for having me.